The Council of the Hundred Suns was not a place for sudden announcements. Galactic politics, intricate as they were, thrived on careful negotiation, slow deliberation, and meticulous planning. But today was different. Today, the universe had been thrown into turmoil by an event that no one had anticipated, not even the vast and all-knowing Council itself. Earth, the once vibrant blue planet at the edge of the solar system, had gone silent. The Council chamber was an awe-inspiring space, suspended within the heart of Nix Solara, a station orbiting a supermassive black hole. Holographic screens shimmered in mid-air, displaying the latest data streams from the farthest corners of the galaxy. Alien beings from dozens of worlds sat in their seats, their eyes flickering with the reflective light of countless stars. Their forms were as varied as the civilizations they represented. Some humanoid, others completely alien in shape, size, and biology. The air buzzed with the low hum of anticipation, a tension that seemed to reverberate in the bones of every individual present. Ambassador Zeltor of the Calaxa Dominion was the first to speak, his voice like the grinding of tectonic plates. "It is an act of sabotage," he growled, his massive form leaning forward as his eyes narrowed. "I do not believe that Earth has simply ceased to function. No, something has happened. Someone has done this to them." Others murmured in agreement, their voices a low hum of suspicion. Ilaris Vial, the crystalline representative of the Starvane Continuum, inclined her head. Her voice was a melodic chime, but beneath its beauty lay a core of cold certainty. "You are correct, Zeltor. The humans have always been unpredictable, but they are not so foolish as to simply vanish. Their silence, it speaks of something far more dangerous, something we do not yet understand." The council was divided, as it often was. The Calaxa Dominion, one of the most militaristic factions in the galaxy, was quick to assume that the humans had become a threat. But others, like the Starvane Continuum, were more cautious. The latter represented an ancient race that revered knowledge and peace, and they suspected that Earth's sudden disappearance was far more complex than an external attack. There was a tension in the room as the different factions weighed the possibilities. The hum of conversation continued, but it was clear that they were all thinking the same thing. Something was wrong with Earth, and it could mean danger for everyone. Veer Aros, the leader of the council, finally raised his shimmering tendrils for silence. As the council leader, he commanded respect. His long, serpentine form glowed faintly in the low light, and his voice carried the weight of centuries of diplomacy. "We must not jump to conclusions," he said. "Before we make any decisions, let us review the facts." A holographic screen flickered to life in front of him, displaying a simple message that had been broadcast to the galaxy from Earth just before the silence began. "It has begun." It was the last transmission from Earth, and no one knew what it meant. "We have received no further communication from Earth," Veraros continued. "No signals, no messages, nothing. And all attempts to re-establish contact have failed." His tendrils twitched with discomfort. "The silence is absolute." Ambassador Zeltor snorted. "And yet, despite this, the humans are still alive. Their planet is still intact, and their technological systems are operational, albeit in a dormant state. This is not an accident. This is an event, one that could threaten the very stability of our galaxy." "I agree," said Ilaris Vale. "There is more at play here than we understand. Earth has always been a rogue player on the galactic stage. Their rise, their defiance, their hunger for knowledge. They have been unpredictable but never passive. Their sudden withdrawal from the galaxy's affairs suggests something far more profound." Veer Aros regarded her with a mixture of caution and curiosity. "And what exactly do you believe this something to be, Ilaris?" "I cannot say for certain," she replied, her crystalline body shimmering in the low light. "But the patterns suggest an awakening, an ascension. If we are to understand what has happened, we must first acknowledge that humanity's silence may not be a result of failure. It may be a choice. A choice? Zelda scoffed. You believe that the humans chose to disappear? Not disappear, Pelorus clarified. They chose something else. A transformation, perhaps, or a migration. We do not know. The murmurs of the council grew louder. The concept of an entire planet vanishing from existence, willingly, was beyond comprehension. The idea that Earth's inhabitants might have chosen this path was both terrifying and intriguing. In the galaxy, there were ancient beings who had ascended to higher forms of existence, entities who had left their physical bodies behind in favor of a transcendental state. Could the humans have done the same? Or was something else at play? The implications were staggering. The debate grew heated. Some argued that Earth's silence was a threat to the rest of the galaxy, that it must be addressed immediately before it could destabilize the region. Others, like Alaris, argued for patience, believing that they needed to understand what had happened before any action was taken. Vader Alaris listened carefully, his expression unreadable. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of discussion, he spoke again. We cannot allow this situation to fester any longer. We must act. I propose that we send an investigative fleet to Earth to determine the cause of this silence and, if possible, re-establish communication with the planet. The Council will need to know what has happened and what the consequences might be for the galaxy as a whole. The motion was met with a mixture of agreement and dissent, but it was clear that something had to be done. The Council of the 100 Suns was known for its caution, but the event unfolding on Earth was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The Council's decision was swift. A fleet would be dispatched immediately, but the stakes were high. If Earth had truly chosen to silence itself for some greater purpose, the galaxy would need to be prepared for whatever came next. Months passed before the investigative fleet, known as the Zenith Armada, arrived in the Sol system. The fleet consisted of the finest ships, armed with the most advanced technology the galaxy had to offer. At its helm was Captain Rin Varix, a seasoned officer with a reputation for solving even the most complex mysteries. His crew was a diverse mix of species, each bringing their unique skills to the mission. They were a formidable force, yet when they arrived at Earth's orbit, they were unprepared for what they found. Earth was still there, hanging in the vast emptiness of space like a forgotten jewel. Its oceans shimmered under the distant light of the sun, and the land masses remained eerily still. There were no signs of war, no signs of destruction. Yet there were no signs of life either. The planet was, for all intents and purposes, a ghost world. Captain Varix stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at Earth through the viewports. His face was expressionless, but his mind raced. "What happened here?" he muttered under his breath. "Captain," called Ensign Kalor, a young officer from the Cerithian race. "We've completed our initial scans. There's no activity on the surface, no transmissions, no movement. The atmosphere is intact, but there's something strange about the readings from the planet's core. It's pulsing." "Pulsing?" Varix repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Explain." "Huh?" Kalor hesitated. "It's not like a natural pulse. It's rhythmic, like something is communicating from deep within the planet. But it's not a signal, it's different." Varix turned toward the main screen. "Prepare to launch a probe. I want to know what's happening below the surface." As the probe descended toward Earth's surface, the crew held their breath. The data it transmitted was staggering. The planet's core, which should have been stable, was reacting to something from within. It was as if Earth itself was alive, responding to some unseen force. The probe's instruments began to pick up strange energy signatures, pulses that echoed through the very fabric of space. The energy was unlike anything the crew had ever encountered. It wasn't technological. It wasn't natural. It was something in between, something incomprehensible. "This is wrong," muttered Dr. Lyra, the ship's lead scientist, her eyes wide with disbelief. "The energy is evolving. It's as if the planet itself is transforming." Captain Varric stared at the screen, his mind racing. "This is no accident. Earth is not dead. It's changing, becoming something else." He turned to his crew. "Prepare for immediate landing. We need to get closer. If Earth is changing, we need to understand how and why. This is beyond any threat we've ever faced." The landing was tense. As the Zenith Armada descended into Earth's atmosphere, the planet seemed to react. The energy pulses grew more intense, more frequent, but they did not interfere with the ship's systems. The world was not fighting back. It was waiting. The crew touched down on Earth's surface, stepping out onto the dry, barren land. The once thriving cities were eerily silent, no human presence, no signs of life. Yet there was a faint glow in the distance, something that seemed to pulse with the same strange energy they had detected. Barracks and his team moved toward the source. As they approached, the ground beneath their feet began to hum, and the air around them crackled with energy. The earth was alive, shifting, transforming. And then it spoke. A voice, deep and resonant, filled the air around them. It wasn't a voice in the traditional sense. It wasn't words, but a feeling, a presence that communicated directly with their minds. "Do not intervene. Witness the ascension." The crew froze, their hearts racing. Whatever had happened to Earth, whatever transformation was taking place, it was not an accident. It was a choice. And the galaxy would never be the same again. Planetary destruction was coming, and circumstances like these could not excuse it. The Zenith Armada had arrived. Captain Rin Varex stood on the bridge of his flagship, a towering vessel known as the Triton's Reach. Its black, sleek surface gleamed under the glow of distant stars. The massive ship, like the rest of the fleet, was equipped with the latest in technology, a combination of deadly force and scientific prowess that had taken the best minds of the galaxy years to develop. Yet, none of that preparation felt like enough now. As they entered the Sol system, there was an eerie calm. Earth, once teeming with life and ambition, lay just ahead, silent and still. Captain Varric gazed at the holographic display in front of him, showing Earth's position in the vast expanse of space. The blue planet, with its familiar continents and swirling oceans, looked peaceful, too peaceful. But beneath that serene exterior, the reality was far different. Varric's mind churned as he thought about the reports that had reached the Council. It wasn't just Earth that had gone silent. It was as if the planet itself had vanished from time. There was no communication, no distress signals, no signs of life. The anomaly wasn't just a message lost in space. It was as if Earth itself had erased its existence from the galactic consciousness. "Captain," Ensign Kalar's voice broke through his thoughts. "We are nearing Earth's orbit. No external interference detected. Everything appears normal from a distance." Varric nodded but didn't take his eyes off the planet. Something about Earth's quiet was unsettling. "Keep scanning. I want to know everything about Earth's atmosphere, its electromagnetic field, the gravimetric anomalies, everything. And keep an eye on that energy pulse we detected." "Understood," Kayla replied. As the Triton's Reach drew closer, a subtle tension grew in the pit of Varric's stomach. The pulse that had been detected weeks before seemed to emanate from Earth's core. It wasn't a conventional energy signature, nothing like a ship's propulsion system or even the natural forces that had been observed from the planet's surface in earlier scans. This was something new, something intentional. "I want all probes online," Varric ordered. "If there's something down there, we need to understand it." Across the bridge, officers moved with precise efficiency, operating consoles, managing communications, and activating systems. A myriad of small high-tech probes were launched into the atmosphere, descending toward the surface. The captain's gaze never left the planet. Earth, silent for so long, was now their mission, its mystery and uncharted territory. The fleet had arrived in the shadow of uncertainty, and nothing could have prepared them for what came next. The energy pulses grew stronger as the probes descended. The readings began to change, slowly at first, like a distant ripple in the fabric of space-time. But then the signals became more distinct, more frequent. Varax's brow furrowed. This was no natural occurrence. Whatever this was, it was deliberate. A sudden blip appeared on the radar screen, a shift in the planet's magnetic field that didn't belong. The pulses were coming from within the planet, not just from the core but from deeper, as if something below the surface had awakened, something ancient, something that had been waiting. The reading suggested a reaction to the probes, as if the planet itself could feel the presence of the armada. "Captain, it's happening," Ensign Kaylor said, her voice tight with anxiety. "The planet's magnetic field is shifting. The atmosphere is becoming more unstable." Varax glanced at her, his face unreadable. "What do you mean, unstable?" "The energy," she responded, her fingers flying across the control console. "It's interacting with the planet's electromagnetic field. There are traces of it in the upper atmosphere as well. This is unprecedented." At that moment, the holographic display on the bridge flickered, displaying an image of Earth's surface. The deep oceans and sprawling landmasses were gone. In their place, the surface appeared cracked. The oceans drained away. The ground seemed to be shifting, as though the planet itself was changing its form. But even more disturbing than that was the fact that there were no signs of life. No movement from the cities, no ships in orbit. Not a single human presence. "The planet's surface is transforming," Varax said, his voice low. "It's like the Earth itself is undergoing a metamorphosis. But why?" The pulse intensified, and the crew could feel it in the air, the subtle vibration, like the hum of a tuning fork ringing deep within their bones. It was unnatural, and the idea that Earth had chosen this path, that its entire civilization had disappeared, possibly even ascended to a higher form, was something neither Varax nor any of his crew could fully comprehend. "Captain?" Kaylor called again, her voice strained. "We're detecting something. It's not human. Something's below the surface." Varax turned to her sharply. "Something? What do you mean?" Kaylor's eyes were wide as she processed the data. "The core of Earth. It's active. And it's not just energy. It's emitting signals. Not just patterns. It's like it's trying to communicate." "Trying to communicate?" Varax repeated. "Yes," she confirmed. "But the signals, they're not in any language we know. It's something beyond conventional communication. Something older. It's alive." Varax stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing. Earth wasn't just silent, it was speaking. The idea seemed too absurd to be true, yet the evidence was piling up before him. Something was happening here, something profound, something beyond their understanding. Through a terror and blissful anticipation, the information disappeared so quickly that it almost felt like it hadn't really happened. "Prepare a landing party," Varax finally ordered. "We need to get down there. We need to understand what's happening on Earth and why." The crew's apprehension was palpable as they made their final preparations. They knew that the risks were high, but they had no choice. This wasn't just about answering a distress signal. This was about uncovering a mystery that could change the fate of the galaxy. The fleet descended into Earth's atmosphere, the Triton's Reach leading the way. As they approached the planet, a strange sensation washed over the crew. It was as if they were being drawn into the planet's gravitational pull, not just physically, but mentally. The energy was thick in the air, and the hum that had grown stronger in the last few hours was now a constant presence. It resonated with something deep inside them, something they couldn't explain. The Triton's reach touched down on the surface of Earth, its landing gears scraping against the cracked Earth. The ground trembled beneath them, as if the planet was responding to their arrival. The doors of the landing bay hissed open, and the crew stepped out onto the barren world. The once thriving cities were now ghost towns. Buildings stood abandoned, their windows shattered, and their structures weathered by time. The sky above them was hazy, a dull grayish-white hue. There were no signs of life, no animals, no humans, no movement. The only thing that seemed alive was the pulse emanating from deep below the planet's surface. Captain Varix led the way, his footsteps crunching against the dry ground. He motioned for the rest of the landing party to follow. The eerie silence was suffocating, the only sound their boots on the cracked Earth. The air was thick with energy, almost electric, and every step felt like they were crossing into another reality. They made their way toward what seemed to be the epicenter of the strange energy, a massive rift in the planet's surface that glowed with an ethereal light. The ground around it was cracked open like an enormous wound, and the pulsing energy was coming from deep within. "Stay alert," Varix said, his voice low. "We don't know what we're dealing with here." As they reached the edge of the rift, the pulse intensified. The air seemed to shimmer with static, and Varix felt a pressure building in his chest. The light from the rift grew brighter, and for the first time, Varix felt a presence, a consciousness that wasn't just in the rift, but was emanating from the very planet itself. And then, suddenly, the air vibrated with a voice. It wasn't a voice in the traditional sense. It wasn't heard through their ears, but through their minds. It was an overwhelming sensation, like the entire planet was speaking to them. "Do not intervene. Witness the ascension." The words echoed through Varix's mind, and a sense of profound awe washed over him. He felt the weight of the message, the ancient power behind it. Whatever had happened to Earth, whatever transformation had occurred, it was not an accident. It was a choice, and it was far from over. Varix stood at the edge of the rift, staring down into the glowing abyss below. There was no going back. Whatever path Earth had chosen, it was one that would change the galaxy forever, and they would bear witness to it. The transformation of Earth had been swift. Within hours of the Zenith Armada landing on the surface, the anomaly that had first been detected from orbit became undeniable. What had appeared to be a planet in stasis was now revealed as something far more intricate, far more purposeful. Captain Rin Varix stood at the edge of the great rift, his eyes fixed on the glowing fissure beneath him, a profound sense of awe mixed with dread building within him. The pulse emanating from deep within the planet was relentless, reverberating through the atmosphere in waves. It was as though the planet itself was breathing, alive, aware, and waiting. The crew, once resolute in their mission to investigate, now found themselves caught in the grip of a force they couldn't comprehend. No one had expected this. No one had foreseen that Earth's silence was not a cry for help, but a deliberate act of transformation. The air around them shimmered with energy, crackling in the wake of the voice that had spoken to them through their minds. "Do not intervene. Witness the ascension." Varix felt the weight of those words in his chest, as if they were not just a warning but an instruction, an edict from the very planet itself. His hand hovered over the communicator at his belt, but he didn't speak. What could he say? What command could break the hold that Earth's inexplicable presence now had on them? Behind him, Ensign Kaylor shifted uneasily, her voice barely above a whisper. "Captain, this is beyond anything we've encountered. This pulse, this energy, it's unlike anything in our records. It's as though Earth is becoming something else." Varix glanced at her, his expression grim. "I know, Kaylor, but we have to know what it is. We have to understand what's happening here." His team, a mixture of scientists, engineers, and officers from various worlds, stood at a distance, their faces a mixture of confusion, fascination, and fear. They were no strangers to strange phenomena, to galactic anomalies, but this was different. This wasn't some distant mystery to be catalogued and studied from a safe distance. This was real. This was happening right in front of them. And as the pulse from the planet's core intensified, Varix felt a deep foreboding in his gut. There was a force at work here that transcended their understanding of the universe. Earth was not simply changing, it was evolving, as though it were casting off the old skin of a forgotten era and stepping into a new age of existence. And the message had been clear. They were to witness it, not interfere. "We should prepare to move deeper into the planet's surface," Varix said finally, breaking the silence that had fallen over the group. His voice sounded distant even to himself, swallowed by the hum of the planet's growing energy. "We need to understand what's causing this." The team moved swiftly, following the captain's lead as they began their descent toward the rift. As they moved deeper into the cavernous fracture, the pulse became more pronounced, and the air seemed to thicken with the very fabric of the unknown. The walls of the rift were lined with strange crystalline formations, glowing faintly as though they were alive with the same energy that pulsed through the earth itself. The further they descended, the more the air seemed to warp around them. It was as though reality itself was bending and stretching, warping under the influence of this strange force. The environment was not hostile, there were no explosions or deadly traps, but it was unnerving in its alien nature. The crystalline formations, some of which seemed to pulse in time with the planet's energy, cast eerie shadows over their path. Varix felt a chill run through his spine, but he did not falter. His training had taught him how to deal with the unexpected, how to keep his composure when the unknown threatened to break the resolve of others. But even he couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the precipice of something far beyond their comprehension.